The slap echoed across the private jet like something that didn't belong there. Crystal glasses trembled. Conversations died mid-sentence. Phones lifted quietly, but no one spoke. Vanessa Cole didn't fight back. She didn't raise her voice, didn't stand up, didn't even look angry. She just turned her face slightly from the impact, then placed her hand gently against her cheek, as if she were the only one in the room not surprised by what had just happened. "Get out of first class," the flight attendant snapped, loud enough for everyone to hear. No one moved to help her. Not the man in the tailored suit watching over his newspaper. Not the woman with diamonds at her wrist. Not the dozen passengers pretending this wasn't their problem. Vanessa stayed seated, calm, still, unshaken. And in her hand, barely noticeable under the cabin lights, was a thin black metal card, its edge catching a quiet glint as she turned it once between her fingers. No one asked about it. No one cared. Not yet. Because in that moment, everyone believed the same thing, that she didn't belong there. They were wrong. And in just a few minutes, every person who stayed silent would wish they hadn't. The jet wasn't moving. It sat still at the edge of the runway, engines humming low like something waiting to wake up. Outside, the Miami sky burned orange and gold, the kind of sunset that made everything look softer than it really was. Inside the cabin, the light filtered through oval windows and laid itself gently across polished leather seats, crystal glasses, and tailored suits. It should have been quiet luxury. Instead, it was tension, tight, invisible, pressing against every surface. "You don't belong here." The words cut through the cabin so sharply that even the low engine hum seemed to pull back for a second. Vanessa Cole didn't move. She sat in the window seat near the front, her posture straight but relaxed, one hand resting lightly on the armrest. Her blazer was simple, navy, clean, not expensive enough to impress anyone in this room. Her shoes were practical, her hair pulled back without effort. Nothing about her demanded attention. And yet, now, every eye was on her. Standing over her was Lindsay Harper, the flight attendant. Blonde hair pinned tight, uniform crisp, smile gone. What replaced it was something harder, certain. "Get up," Lindsay said again, louder this time, just enough for the entire cabin to hear. "You need to leave this section." A man in a gray suit lowered his newspaper, folding it slowly like he didn't want to miss what came next. Across the aisle, a woman with pearl earrings tilted her head, curiosity sharpening her expression. 2 rows back, someone had already lifted a phone, the camera lens catching the reflection of cabin lights. Vanessa finally looked up. Not fast, not defensive, just deliberate. "This is my seat," she said. Her voice wasn't raised. It didn't need to be. It carried in a way that made the silence around it feel heavier. Lindsay's jaw tightened. "No," she said, "it isn't." A faint ripple moved through the cabin, small, uncertain. Not agreement, not disagreement, just people shifting in their seats, adjusting themselves into comfort as something uncomfortable unfolded. Vanessa didn't reach for her bag, didn't gather her things, didn't even sigh. She simply stayed where she was. Outside, a baggage cart rolled slowly past the wing. Its headlights cut across the glass for a moment, then disappeared. The world outside kept moving. Inside, time seemed to pause. "Ma'am," Lindsay continued, now with that practiced tone that turned authority into something official. "First class is reserved for ticketed passengers. I'm going to need you to cooperate." The word cooperate lingered in the air. Vanessa's eyes didn't leave her face. "I am," she said, "by staying in my seat." That was the moment something shifted, not in Vanessa, in Lindsay. A flicker of irritation turned into something sharper, something personal. The kind of reaction that doesn't come from policy, but from assumption, from certainty. Behind Lindsay, a man in a navy blazer leaned forward slightly, whispering to the woman beside him. She nodded, lips pressing together like she had already made up her mind. Another phone lifted. No one said a word. Vanessa slowly raised her hand, not in defense, not to argue, but to lightly touch the side of her face as if grounding herself. Her fingers brushed her cheek once, then dropped back to her lap. Still calm. Too calm. "You're holding up this flight," Lindsay said, voice tightening. "We have people on board who need to get to their destinations." Vanessa glanced around the cabin for the first time, not searching for help, just seeing. Seeing the eyes that watched but didn't meet hers, the small smiles that came and went, the hesitation that never became action, the silence. It told her everything she needed to know. "I paid for this seat," she said. Lindsay laughed, short, sharp, without warmth. "That's what you're saying?" Vanessa didn't respond immediately. She reached down beside her and adjusted the small leather folio resting near her knee. Her movements were slow, controlled, intentional. A camera zoomed in slightly from across the aisle. She could feel it. Everyone could. But no one stopped it. "No," Vanessa said quietly. "That's what the record says." Lindsay's expression hardened. And then the sound came fast. A sharp crack that didn't belong in a place like this. Not loud enough to echo, but loud enough to change the air. Lindsay's hand dropped back to her side. Vanessa's head had turned slightly with the impact. For a second, just 1 second, no one breathed. The phones didn't lower. The man with the newspaper froze mid-fold. The woman with the pearls didn't blink. Even the engines seemed quieter now. Vanessa stayed exactly where she was. She didn't flinch again, didn't speak, didn't react the way the moment expected her to. Slowly, she brought her hand up and touched her cheek. Not in shock, not in anger, just acknowledgement. Her fingers rested there for a moment, then lowered. When she looked back up, her expression hadn't changed. If anything, it had become calmer. That was the part that unsettled them. Not the slap, not the accusation. The calm. Lindsay took a step back, as if realizing, just for a fraction of a second, that something about this situation didn't match the script she had already decided on. But she recovered quickly. "She's being disruptive," Lindsay said, turning slightly so others could hear. "Refusing to comply with crew instructions." The words landed like labels, and once they were spoken, they started to stick. A man in the back muttered something under his breath. Someone else shifted, crossing their arms. The narrative was forming. Vanessa didn't interrupt it. She didn't defend herself. She didn't even raise her voice. She simply sat there, still, composed, present, and in her right hand resting quietly against her lap, something small caught the light for just a moment. A thin black metal card. No logo, no name. Its edge worn smooth from use. No one noticed. Not yet. Outside, the sun dipped lower, painting the wing in deeper gold. Inside, the cabin waited, because something had already gone too far, and whether they realized it or not, there was no going back. The silence didn't break right away. It stretched, thin, fragile, heavy in the air like glass about to crack. Vanessa Cole sat exactly where she had been, her fingers now resting lightly against her lap, her cheek still warm beneath her skin. The sting wasn't what filled the space. It was everything around it, the eyes, the phones, the quiet agreement forming without words. Lindsay Harper straightened her uniform, as if resetting the scene. "We're done here," she said, her voice controlled now, practiced. "You need to gather your things and step off the aircraft." She said it louder than necessary. Not for Vanessa, for everyone else, to make it official. Vanessa didn't reach for anything. She didn't move. Instead, she tilted her head just slightly, looking at Lindsay with the same steady calm that had unsettled her seconds earlier. "No," Vanessa said. It wasn't defiance, it wasn't loud, it wasn't even emotional. It was simply final. A quiet ripple passed through the cabin again. Someone shifted in their seat. A glass clinked faintly against a tray. The man in the navy blazer leaned closer to his companion, whispering something that ended with a small, amused breath. "They always try," the woman with the pearls murmured, just loud enough for those nearby to hear. Vanessa heard it. She didn't react. Lindsay's expression tightened again, the thin line of her mouth pulling sharper at the corners. "Excuse me," she said. Vanessa didn't repeat herself. She didn't need to. The refusal was still there, sitting between them like something solid. "Ma'am," Lindsay continued, her tone shifting again, this time into something colder, more pointed. "You are not in your assigned seat. I'm trying to handle this professionally." Vanessa reached slowly for her folio. The movement caught attention immediately. Several phones tilted slightly, zooming in. The air seemed to lean forward with her. She opened the folio carefully, the leather soft against her fingers. From inside, she removed a boarding pass and held it out. Not aggressively, not defensively, just enough for Lindsay to take it. "Then verify it," Vanessa said. The words landed differently this time. Not just calm, precise. Lindsay took the boarding pass with a quick motion, her fingers gripping it tighter than necessary. She held it up, scanning it with her eyes, then pulling it closer, then farther away. The paper didn't change, but her expression did. Just a flicker, a hesitation that lasted less than a second. Then it was gone. "This doesn't look right," she said. A man across the aisle frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" someone whispered behind him. Vanessa watched Lindsay, her face still, her breathing even. "Then scan it," she said again. The repetition wasn't louder, but it was heavier. Lindsay didn't move toward the scanner. Instead, she flicked the boarding pass back. It struck Vanessa lightly against her chest before sliding down into her lap. Another small sound moved through the cabin. Not outrage. Not yet. Just discomfort. Vanessa looked down at the bent edge of the paper where Lindsay's grip had creased it. For a moment, she ran her thumb along the fold, smoothing it carefully. Then she placed it flat on the tray table in front of her. "Scan it," she said, one more time. Behind Lindsay, a young man, early 30s, expensive watch, phone held low, shifted his angle slightly. Nathan Brooks. His screen reflected Vanessa's face, framed by the narrow aisle and the uniform standing over her. "First-class drama," he murmured quietly to his viewers, his voice almost amused. "Let's see how this plays out." The comments were already moving. Vanessa didn't look at him. She kept her eyes on Lindsay. That seemed to bother Lindsay more than anything else. "You don't get to tell me how to do my job," Lindsay snapped. Vanessa's gaze didn't waver. "And you don't get to decide who belongs," she replied. That landed. A little harder this time. The woman with the pearls shifted again, her bracelets clicking softly as she leaned toward her husband. "This is ridiculous," she whispered. "Why doesn't she just go?" "Because it would be easier. Because it would make the moment disappear. Because it would restore the illusion of order everyone in this cabin had paid for." Vanessa heard that too, and still she didn't move. Outside, the last edge of sunlight dipped lower behind the horizon, the golden glow turning deeper, heavier. The cabin lights adjusted automatically, softening into a cooler tone. Inside, the air felt colder. Lindsay crossed her arms now, no longer pretending this was routine. "Last chance," she said. "Either you cooperate, or I call security." The word security shifted something in the room. Phones lifted higher, eyes sharpened. The story was changing again. Vanessa's hand moved slightly, not toward her bag, not toward her phone, but to the tray table. Her fingers rested beside the boarding pass. Still, measured. "You should have called them already," she said. That stopped Lindsay. Just for a second. It wasn't what she expected. Vanessa's tone hadn't changed. No challenge, no fear, just clarity. Behind them, a man in the third row, gray hair, broad shoulders, watched closely now. Harold Bennett. He had seen Vanessa board earlier, seen the pass, seen the calm. Something about this wasn't adding up, but he stayed seated, like everyone else. Lindsay recovered quickly, tapping her headset. "Gate control," she said, her voice suddenly crisp again. "I need security on board. We have a non-compliant passenger in first class refusing to vacate her seat." Non-compliant. The word settled over Vanessa like a label being applied in real time. Nathan's phone zoomed slightly closer. "There it is," he whispered. "That escalated fast." Vanessa glanced down for the briefest moment. Her right hand shifted slightly in her lap. The black metal card caught the cabin light again. Just a flicker. Just enough to reflect something sharp across its edge. She turned it slowly between her fingers, as if grounding herself. No one noticed. Not the camera. Not Lindsay. Not the passengers who had already decided what they were looking at. Vanessa lifted her eyes again, her gaze steady, calm, unwavering. "I'm not moving," she said. And this time, it didn't sound like resistance. It sounded like certainty. Somewhere near the front of the aircraft, the door opened. A figure stepped in. Dark uniform, measured stride, one hand resting near his radio. Security. And just like that, the moment became something else entirely. Officer Daniel Reyes stepped into the cabin, but with the kind of calm that usually ended situations like this quickly. Mid-40s, broad shoulders, clean uniform, the weight of long shifts in his eyes. He had seen arguments, loud passengers, missed connections, drunk executives who thought money meant rules didn't apply. He was expecting noise. What he found instead was silence. Not peaceful silence, the kind that felt staged, held together by people pretending nothing had gone wrong. His gaze moved slowly across the cabin. Phones raised, faces turned. A woman sitting still by the window. A flight attendant standing too rigid. A tension that didn't belong in a space like this. "Evening," Reyes said, voice low but carrying. "What seems to be the problem?" Lindsay stepped forward immediately, almost relieved. "Officer, thank God," she said, lowering her voice just enough to sound professional, but still loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. "We have a passenger refusing to comply with crew instructions. She's in a seat that isn't hers and won't move." Reyes nodded once, listening. Then he turned toward Vanessa. She hadn't moved, still seated, hands resting lightly in her lap, boarding pass flat on the tray table. That same calm, unshaken presence that didn't fit the situation described. It didn't match what he was used to. "Ma'am?" Reyes said, stepping closer, keeping his tone neutral. "I'm going to need you to gather your belongings and come with me so we can sort this out at the gate." A ripple passed through the cabin again. Nathan's phone tilted slightly higher. "Here we go," he whispered. Vanessa looked up at Reyes. Not defensive. Not afraid. Just focused. "For what reason?" she asked. Reyes blinked once. He wasn't used to that question delivered that way. Usually, people argued, raised their voices, tried to explain too much. This was different. "This is about verifying your seat assignment," he said. "We can handle it off the aircraft." "My boarding pass is right there," Vanessa said. nodding slightly toward the tray table. Reyes glanced down. The pass was visible, clear, within reach. He hesitated for just a moment. Before he could respond, Lindsay stepped in again. "She's already been disruptive," she said quickly. "Refused multiple requests, delayed boarding. We can't keep everyone waiting like this." The word disruptive hung heavier than it should have. Reyes felt it. And like most people in his position, he defaulted to the version of the story given by the person in uniform. He looked back at Vanessa. "Ma'am, I understand," he said. "But right now, I need you to cooperate so we can resolve this." Vanessa didn't reach for her bag, didn't stand, didn't argue. She simply looked at him for a moment longer. "Scan it first," she said. There it was again. The same request. Simple, direct, reasonable. Reyes glanced back at Lindsay. She didn't move toward the scanner. Instead, she crossed her arms tighter. "We don't have time for that," she said. "We've already gone over this." Something about that answer didn't sit right. Reyes felt it, not as a clear thought, but as a shift. A small imbalance in the story he had just accepted. Behind him, the cabin stirred. A few more phones angled. Not at Vanessa this time, but at Lindsay. Jasmine Lee, seated 3 rows back, held her phone steady now, her eyes focused, not on the woman being accused, but on the woman doing the accusing. She had been quiet until now, observing, listening. Something wasn't lining up. Vanessa didn't look at Jasmine. She didn't look at the cameras. She kept her attention on Reyes. "You're asking me to leave my seat," she said, her voice even, controlled, "without verifying the only piece of evidence in front of you." Reyes shifted his weight slightly. It wasn't confrontation. It was clarity. And clarity made things harder. "Ma'am." Before he could finish, a voice cut in from across the aisle. "That's not right." It wasn't loud, but it carried. Every head turned. Harold Bennett had stood up halfway from his seat, one hand resting on the armrest, his posture firm despite the hesitation in his eyes. His wife tugged lightly at his sleeve. "Harold," she whispered. He didn't sit back down. "I saw her board," he said, looking at Reyes. "She had that seat, showed her pass. This whole thing started after." The cabin shifted again, more noticeably this time. A few people glanced at each other. A few looked down. The silence cracked, just slightly. Lindsay turned toward Harold, her expression sharpening. "Sir, please remain seated," she said quickly. "We're handling the situation." Harold didn't move. "I'm seated enough," he replied. A faint murmur moved through the cabin. Nathan's phone dipped slightly. The comments scrolling across his screen were changing. "Wait, what? She showed the pass? Why aren't they scanning it?" For the first time, uncertainty entered the room. Reyes felt it immediately. Crowds were predictable when they agreed, unpredictable when they started questioning. He turned back to Vanessa. "Ma'am," he said more carefully now, "I need you to understand." "I understand perfectly," Vanessa said. She didn't raise her voice, but something in it shifted. Not louder, stronger. "You were told a story," she continued, "and you accepted it without checking if it was true." Reyes paused. That landed. Not as accusation, as fact. Behind him, Lindsay's posture stiffened again. "This is exactly what I mean," she said, her voice tightening. "She's being difficult, making this into something it isn't." Vanessa's gaze moved briefly, just briefly, to Lindsay, then back to Reyes. "Asking for verification," she said, "is not being difficult." Jasmine's phone didn't shake now. Her hand had steadied. She wasn't filming a disruption anymore. She was documenting something else. Something that felt familiar in a way she couldn't ignore. Authority, assumption, and the space between them. Reyes exhaled slowly. The situation wasn't what he had expected. It wasn't clean. It wasn't obvious. And yet, the pressure to act remained. The cabin was watching, waiting. He stepped slightly closer. "Ma'am," he said, lowering his voice, "if you step off with me, we can resolve this faster." Vanessa held his gaze. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then, she looked down. Not at her bag, not at the boarding pass, at her hand. The black metal card rested there, catching a faint reflection of the cabin light as it turned slightly between her fingers. She stilled it, placed it flat against her palm, then looked back up. "I'm not leaving this aircraft," she said. No edge, no anger, just certainty. Reyes felt the weight of that statement settle into the space between them. Behind him, someone shifted again. A glass set down softly. A breath released. The cabin wasn't silent anymore. It was waiting. Waiting for something to break. Waiting for someone to be wrong. And for the first time since he stepped on board, Reyes wasn't entirely sure who that was. The uncertainty didn't show on his face. Years in uniform had taught him how to hold a line, how to keep his expression steady, even when the ground beneath the situation shifted. But inside, something had moved. Just enough to slow him down. Just enough to make him look again. Vanessa Cole didn't look like trouble. She didn't look like someone trying to slip into a space she didn't belong. She looked settled. Like someone who had already decided something long before this moment. "Ma'am," Reyes said again, softer this time, "I need you to understand the position we're in." Vanessa held his gaze, her expression unreadable but not cold. "I do," she said. Behind her calm, something flickered. Not fear, memory. For a brief second, the polished leather seat beneath her seemed to fade into something else entirely. A cracked plastic bench. Cold metal beneath thin fabric. Southside Chicago. Winter pressing through the walls of a bus station that never really closed. Vanessa at 19 curled into herself on a narrow bench, her coat pulled tight, her breath visible in the air. No phone, no money, no place to go that night. A security guard had walked past her 3 times that evening, each time slower than the last. Not asking questions, not offering help, just watching, waiting. "Ma'am," he had said finally, tapping his flashlight against his palm. "You can't sleep here." Vanessa had sat up slowly, her body stiff from the cold. "I'm not sleeping," she had answered. It had been the truth. She hadn't slept in hours. But the guard didn't hear truth. He heard inconvenience. "You need to move along," he had said. Move along. 2 words she would hear again and again in different places, different voices, always meaning the same thing. You don't belong here. Back on the jet, Vanessa blinked once, the memory folding back into the present as smoothly as it had come. Reyes was still watching her, waiting. The cabin was still watching too, phones still raised, eyes still fixed, and still, no one moved to help. Vanessa's hand rested lightly on the tray table now, her fingers close to the boarding pass, but not touching it. "I've been told to move before," she said quietly. The words weren't directed at anyone in particular, but everyone heard them. "In places I paid to be," she continued. "In places I worked to reach. In places I helped build." A faint shift moved through the cabin. Not loud, but noticeable. Lindsay's posture stiffened again. "This is not about your personal experiences," she said quickly. This is about following procedures. Vanessa turned her head slightly toward her. Is it? She asked. The question wasn't sharp, but it cut. Reyes felt the room change again. This wasn't just a disagreement anymore. It was something deeper, something older. He glanced down at the boarding pass again. Still sitting there. Still untouched by the one action that would resolve everything. Scan it. Why hadn't that happened yet? The thought crossed his mind more clearly this time. Before he could act on it, Kevin Ross stepped forward from the doorway. He had been standing just behind Reyes, observing, waiting for the moment to step in as management. Mid-30s, pressed shirt, the kind of confidence that came from being used to control without challenge. All right, Kevin said, clapping his hands once lightly. Let's bring this back down. His tone was calm, almost friendly, but it carried authority. He stepped into the aisle, positioning himself between Vanessa and the rest of the cabin, turning slightly so he could address both her and the watching passengers at once. Ma'am, he said, offering a practiced smile, we don't want this to become a bigger situation than it needs to be. Vanessa looked at him, still calm, still present. Then it shouldn't have, she replied. The smile on Kevin's face didn't drop, but it tightened. We can sort this out quickly at the gate, he continued. No need to hold everyone else up. There it was again. The pressure of the crowd. The suggestion that she was the problem. Vanessa's eyes moved briefly across the cabin. The businessman who wouldn't meet her gaze. The woman with the pearls now looking down at her hands. Nathan, still recording, but quieter now. Jasmine, steady, focused, watching everything. Harold still half standing, unsure but no longer silent. The room had shifted, but not enough. Not yet. Vanessa looked back at Kevin. You're asking me to leave my seat, she said, without confirming whether I'm supposed to be in it. Kevin nodded, still smiling. We'll confirm everything once we're off the aircraft. Vanessa tilted her head slightly. And if I'm right? She asked. Kevin didn't answer immediately, because the question didn't fit his script. Behind him, Lindsay shifted again, impatience creeping back into her posture. This is going nowhere, she said. She's stalling. Vanessa didn't look at her. She kept her attention on Kevin. If I'm right, she repeated, what happens to everything that's already been said? The cabin went quiet again. A different kind of quiet. Heavier. Kevin's smile faded just a fraction. That's not the issue right now, he said. Vanessa nodded slowly. Exactly, she said. The words settled into the space between them. Because that was the truth. It wasn't the issue. Not to them. Not until it was too late. Reyes felt it clearly now. The imbalance. The way the situation was being managed. Not to find the truth, but to move past it. And for the first time since stepping on board, he didn't like it. Vanessa's hand shifted slightly. The black metal card turned once more between her fingers, catching a sharper reflection this time. Jasmine's eyes flicked to it. She saw it clearly now. The engraving. Not decorative. Functional. Her brow furrowed. Something about it didn't belong in Vanessa's hand. Or maybe it belonged there more than anything else in this room. Vanessa stilled the card again, then placed it gently on the tray table beside the boarding pass, not offering it, not explaining it, just placing it where it could be seen. Kevin glanced down, just briefly, and something in his expression changed. Not fully, not yet, but enough, because whatever he had expected to see, that wasn't it. The cabin held its breath again, because now, there were two pieces of evidence on that table, One ignored, one unexplained, and both of them refused to disappear. The boarding pass lay flat against the tray table. The black metal card rested beside it, quiet, unassuming, catching the cabin light in a way that felt sharper now, like it was no longer just an object, but a question waiting to be answered. Kevin Ross looked down at the table again, just for a moment. Then he looked away. Fast enough that most people wouldn't notice, but not fast enough to hide it from the ones who were paying attention. Jasmine saw it. So did Harold. And somewhere deep in his instincts, Reyes felt it too. A hesitation, a fracture. But Kevin recovered quickly, smoothing his expression back into something controlled, something practiced. "Ma'am," he said, his tone firmer now, "we're past the point of discussion." Vanessa didn't respond right away. She followed his gaze down to the table, then back up again. "You passed that point without checking anything," she said. Kevin exhaled through his nose, a small release of patience thinning. "We are not going to debate this in front of other passengers," he replied. "You're delaying departure. We have a full cabin that needs to leave." The phrase landed the way it was meant to, not as a fact, as pressure. Vanessa's eyes moved slowly across the cabin again. Now the looks had changed. They weren't just curious anymore. They were divided. Some still leaned toward Lindsay, some toward Kevin, but more than a few were starting to shift. Phones had adjusted. Angles had changed. Jasmine's camera stayed fixed on Kevin now. Not Vanessa. Not the woman sitting still. The man avoiding the table. Reyes noticed that too. The shift. The imbalance growing stronger. But protocol still held him in place. Kevin stepped forward, closing the distance between himself and Vanessa just enough to reclaim control of the space. "Officer," he said, turning slightly toward Reyes. "We're going to need her removed so we can proceed." There it was, the escalation. Reyes nodded once, slow, controlled. He didn't like the way this felt. But the situation was moving, and standing still wasn't an option anymore. He stepped forward again. "Ma'am," he said, more formal now, "I'm asking you to stand up and come with me." Vanessa didn't reach for her bag, didn't shift her posture, didn't even look at Kevin. Her attention stayed on Reyes. "Before I do that," she said, "I need you to answer one question." Reyes paused. He hadn't expected that. "What question?" he asked. Vanessa nodded slightly toward the tray table. "Did you verify my seat before asking me to leave it?" The question was simple, clear, impossible to twist. Reyes looked down again, at the boarding pass, at the card, at the space between them. Then he looked back up. "No," he said. The word hung there, not loud, but heavier than anything said so far. A ripple moved through the cabin again, more noticeable now, more uncomfortable. Kevin stepped in immediately. "That's not relevant," he said sharply. Vanessa turned her head just slightly toward him. "It is to me," she said. Kevin's jaw tightened. "This isn't about you anymore," he replied. "This is about the operation of this flight." Vanessa's gaze held his for a moment. Then, she smiled. Not wide, not warm, just knowing. "That's exactly the problem," she said. Something in Kevin's posture shifted again, a fraction of a second, but it was there. Behind him, Lindsay crossed her arms tighter, her voice cutting in again, sharper now, more urgent. "She's been refusing instructions from the start," she said. "You can't let this continue." The words felt rushed, less certain than before. Vanessa turned her head slightly, her eyes meeting Lindsay's for the first time in several minutes. Not confrontational, not angry, just direct. "I've been seated from the start," she said. The sentence landed quietly, but it hit harder than anything loud could have. Across the aisle, Harold shifted again, fully standing now. "She's right," he said. "That's all she's done." His wife didn't pull him back this time. The cabin didn't ignore him this time either. A few heads nodded, small, cautious, but real. Nathan's phone lowered just a fraction. His thumb hovered over the screen, hesitating now, not sure which story he was telling anymore. Jasmine didn't hesitate. Her camera stayed locked on Kevin, waiting, watching. Reyes felt the balance tipping, not fully, but enough. He looked at Kevin again. "Sir," he said carefully, "we should probably verify." Kevin cut him off. "No," he said. "We're not turning this into a debate." He gestured slightly toward the door. "We're resolving it at the gate." Vanessa's hand moved then, slow, controlled. She reached for the boarding pass, lifting it between two fingers. The crease from earlier was still there, visible, undeniable. Then she set it back down, next to the black card, side by side. Truth. And something else. Something not yet named. "You keep saying resolve," she said. Her voice hadn't changed. Still calm, still steady. "But you haven't even looked." Kevin's patience snapped just enough to show. "I've seen enough," he said. Vanessa tilted her head slightly. "No," she replied. "You decided enough." That landed differently, sharper, more precise. Reyes felt it in his chest, because that was the difference between seeing and deciding. And suddenly, the room felt smaller, tighter, the air heavier, because everyone could feel it now. The gap between what was happening and what should have happened. Vanessa's hand rested lightly beside the card again. Her fingers brushed its edge, then stilled. She looked at Reyes one more time, not asking, not pleading, just giving him the chance. "Scan it," she said. 3 words, again. But this time, they didn't sound like a request. They sounded like a line. And everyone in the cabin knew. Once it was crossed, there would be no way to pretend this had been a misunderstanding. Reyes hesitated, just long enough for the silence to stretch again. Just long enough for the cameras to capture everything. Just long enough for the moment to decide what it would become. And Kevin still didn't move. The hesitation stretched just long enough to become visible. Not to everyone, but to the ones who were watching closely. Jasmine Lee didn't blink. Her phone stayed steady in her hand, the red recording light reflecting faintly in her eyes. She wasn't capturing a scene anymore. She was studying it. Every pause, every glance, every decision not made. Vanessa's fingers rested beside the black metal card, her posture unchanged, her breathing even. She looked like the only person in the room who wasn't trying to control what came next. That, more than anything, unsettled Jasmine. Because control usually showed itself in movement, in urgency, in noise. Vanessa had none of that. And yet, everything seemed to be shifting around her. Jasmine leaned forward slightly in her seat, her eyes narrowing as she took in details she hadn't fully processed before. Vanessa's bag. Small, soft leather, worn at the edges, not neglected, but used. Not something you carried for a single flight. But there was something else. The absence. No overhead luggage, no carry-on, no rush when she boarded. Jasmine remembered that now. She had been one of the last passengers to step onto the jet. She had seen Vanessa already seated, not settling in, already there, like she had nowhere else to go or like she had always been there. Jasmine's gaze dropped to Vanessa's hand, the black metal card. She hadn't thought much of it at first. Just something small, something ordinary. But now she saw the edge more clearly. The engraving. Faint. Precise. Not decorative. Functional. Her breath caught just slightly. That wasn't a membership card. That wasn't a credit card. It looked more like access. Her eyes flicked toward Kevin. He had seen it too. Just for a second. And he had chosen not to react. That choice mattered. Because people ignored things for a reason. Either they didn't understand them, or they understood them too well. Jasmine adjusted her grip on her phone, her focus sharpening. Across the aisle, Nathan Brooks shifted in his seat. His live stream was still running, but his tone had changed. Less confident now, less amused. "I don't know," he murmured quietly. "Something's off." The comment section was moving faster now, questions replacing assumptions. Why won't they scan it? She's not acting like someone lying. That card, what is that? Nathan read the comments, his thumb hovering again. For the first time, he looked uncertain, not about what he was seeing, but about what he had already said. Back at the front of the cabin, Reyes stood still, caught between two versions of the same moment, the one he had been told, and the one unfolding in front of him. His eyes dropped once more to the tray table. The boarding pass, the card, side by side. He took a step forward, slow, deliberate. Kevin noticed immediately. "Officer," he said, voice tightening just enough. "We're handling this." Reyes didn't look at him. "Then handle it," he replied quietly. The words weren't confrontational, but they shifted something. Because now, responsibility had been placed back where it belonged. Kevin held his gaze for a moment, then looked down again, at the table, at the card. The silence stretched again. And this time, it wasn't empty. It was full of pressure. Vanessa watched him, not pushing, not demanding, just waiting. That was what made it unbearable, because waiting required something from him, a choice. Jasmine leaned forward just slightly more, her voice barely above a whisper. "Check it," she said. No one turned to her, but everyone heard it. Kevin's jaw tightened. He didn't respond. Harold took a breath, then another, and finally, he spoke again. "Son," he said, his voice steady now, grounded in something older than the moment. "You've got the proof right there." Kevin's shoulders lifted just a fraction, then dropped. He exhaled, slow, controlled, but not steady, because something inside him had already started to shift. He reached forward. Not fast, not confidently, but enough. His fingers hovered over the black metal card. For just a second, he hesitated. Because up close, it didn't look like anything he was used to dismissing. The weight of it, the finish, the engraving along the edge, subtle, precise, deliberate. His fingers closed around it, and the moment he lifted it, everything changed. Not loudly, not dramatically, but in a way that moved through the room like a current. Vanessa didn't react, didn't lean forward, didn't explain. She simply watched. Kevin turned the card over in his hand. Once, then again. The light caught the engraving more clearly now, A sequence of numbers, a model designation, and beneath it, a name. Not printed, etched, permanent. His eyes narrowed, because he recognized it. Not immediately, but enough to feel it before he could place it. He swallowed, then looked up. At Vanessa, for the first time since he stepped onto the aircraft. He wasn't certain anymore, and that uncertainty spread through the cabin, through the cameras, through every person who had already decided what this moment was supposed to be, because now there was something in his hand that didn't fit the story, and it refused to be ignored. Kevin Ross stared at the card longer than he meant to, not because he didn't understand what he was looking at, but because he was starting to. The numbers etched along the edge weren't decorative. They followed a pattern he'd seen before. Maintenance logs, internal fleet designations, restricted access tags used only by engineering and executive operations. This wasn't something a passenger carried. This wasn't something you found, borrowed, or faked. This was something issued. His grip tightened slightly. The cabin felt closer now, smaller. The quiet no longer empty, but watching him. "Where did you get this?" Kevin asked. It was the wrong question. Vanessa didn't answer right away. She didn't rush to explain. Instead, she reached forward slowly, her fingers brushing the edge of the card still in his hand. Not taking it back, just steadying it. Her touch was light, but deliberate. Then she looked at him. "Before I answer that," she said, "you should ask yourself why you didn't look sooner." The words didn't land like an accusation. They landed like a mirror. Kevin swallowed. Behind him, Lindsay shifted again, her voice quick, defensive. "It doesn't matter where she got it," she said. "People carry all kinds of things. That doesn't prove anything." But it didn't sound as confident this time, because even she could see it now. The card didn't belong in the story she had created. Reyes stepped closer. "Let me see that," he said quietly. Kevin hesitated, just for a fraction of a second, then handed it over. Reyes turned the card in his hand, his brow tightening slightly. He wasn't trained in aircraft systems, but he knew enough to recognize controlled access when he saw it. "This isn't a passenger item," he said. No one responded, because everyone already felt it. The shift, the doubt. Vanessa reached for her boarding pass again, lifting it between two fingers and holding it up. Not toward Kevin this time. Toward the room. Toward the witnesses. "Two things are sitting here," she said calmly. "One you refuse to check. The other you don't understand." She placed the boarding pass back down. Then her eyes moved slowly across the cabin. Meeting people now. Not avoiding them. Not shrinking. Seeing them. "You built a story," she continued, her voice steady. "And then you protected it." The influencer, Nathan, lowered his phone just slightly. The comments had turned fully now. "This is bad. They messed up. Why didn't they just check?" Jasmine didn't look at her screen. She didn't need to. She could feel the direction of the room changing. Harold crossed his arms, standing firm now, no longer unsure. Lindsay's voice cut in again, sharper this time. "This is getting out of hand," she said. "We don't have time for this kind of performance." Vanessa turned to her slowly. "This isn't a performance," she said. Then she stood, for the first time since the slap. The movement was quiet, controlled, but it shifted everything. Because until now, she had been seated, contained. Now, she occupied the space. No sudden motion, no aggression, just presence. The aisle seemed narrower somehow, the cabin quieter. Vanessa reached toward the tray table again, but this time her hand moved past the boarding pass. passed the card. She picked up neither. Instead, she let them sit there. Visible. Undeniable. Then she looked at Kevin, at Reyes, at Lindsay. "Before I leave this aircraft," she said, "unlock the truth." The words didn't echo. They settled, heavy, final. Kevin frowned slightly. "What does that mean?" he asked. Vanessa didn't explain. She didn't need to. She gestured, just slightly, toward the card in Reyes's hand. Reyes looked down at it again, then back up, then toward Kevin. "Is there a system we can run this through?" he asked. Kevin hesitated, again. That hesitation didn't go unnoticed this time. Jasmine caught it. Harold caught it. Even Nathan caught it. Because now, hesitation meant something. "It's not necessary," Kevin said quickly. "We already have—" "You didn't check," Reyes said, cutting him off. The shift was small, but it was real. Kevin looked at him, then at the cabin, then back at Vanessa, and for the first time, he realized he was no longer controlling the situation. The situation was controlling him. "Fine," Kevin said, his voice tight now. "We'll verify it." He turned toward the cockpit. "Get me flight systems," he called. A pause, then movement. A crew member stepped forward, uncertain now, glancing between Kevin and Vanessa. The cabin held its breath. Because this was the line. Once crossed, there would be no going back to assumptions, no quiet resolution, no version of the story where this didn't happen. Vanessa didn't move. She stood still in the aisle, her hands at her sides, her posture straight, her expression calm. Not triumphant, not tense, just ready. Ready for something she had already accepted. Because she had seen this moment before. Different place. Different faces. Same silence. Same decision. Same line. And this time, she wasn't moving past it. The system beeped softly from the cockpit. A small sound. But in the stillness of the cabin, it might as well have been thunder. Kevin turned sharply. "Run the code," he said. Reyes handed the card over. The crew member took it carefully, like it mattered now. Because it did. Seconds passed. No one spoke. No one moved. Even the cameras seemed to hold their breath. And then, the screen changed. Kevin saw it first. His face didn't drop all at once. It shifted. Slow. Piece by piece, like something inside him was being rewritten in real time. "Kevin?" Lindsay asked, her voice thinner now. "What is it?" He didn't answer. Because he couldn't. Not yet. Because the story he had built, the one he had defended, was collapsing. And there was nothing left to hold it up. Vanessa watched him, quiet, unmoved. Because she already knew what he was about to see. And the rest of them were about to learn it the same way he did. Too late. Kevin Ross didn't move. For a moment, he simply stood there, staring at the screen as if it might change if he looked at it long enough. It didn't. The cabin waited. The quiet now was different, heavier, expectant. "Kevin?" Lindsay's voice came again, thinner now, the edge of certainty gone. "What is it?" He swallowed. His throat felt dry because the information in front of him didn't just contradict the situation. It erased it. He turned slowly, not toward Vanessa, toward the cockpit. "Get the captain," he said. The words landed like something falling out of place. Reyes stiffened slightly. Jasmine's grip on her phone tightened. Nathan's screen tilted again, his voice gone completely now, replaced by silence as he watched. Kevin, Lindsay pressed, stepping closer. What are you doing? We already— Get the captain, he repeated, sharper this time. That stopped her, because now— She heard it. The shift. This wasn't control anymore. This was reaction. A crew member moved quickly toward the cockpit door. The handle turned. A brief pause. Then it opened. Captain William Turner stepped out with the calm gravity of a man who had seen storms most people only imagined. Late 50s, silver at the temples, posture steady, presence quiet but undeniable. His eyes swept the cabin once. Phones, passengers, security, crew, and then Vanessa. He didn't react, not immediately. Explain, he said. Kevin stepped forward, holding the tablet out slightly, his voice lower now, controlled but strained. Sir, we may have a situation. The choice of words mattered. May have, because he couldn't say it yet, not in front of everyone. Captain Turner took the tablet, read, and in that instant, everything changed. It wasn't dramatic. He didn't gasp, didn't step back, but something in his face settled, as if pieces had just aligned in a way that left no room for interpretation. He looked up, directly at Vanessa, and for the first time since this began, someone in authority saw her, not as a disruption, not as a problem, but as a fact. Ms. Cole, he said quietly. The name moved through the cabin like a current. Not ma'am, not passenger. Her name. Lindsay froze. Kevin closed his eyes briefly. Reyes exhaled, almost imperceptibly. Vanessa didn't react outwardly, but her stillness deepened. Yes, Captain, she said. The formality of it, the familiarity, didn't belong in the story anyone had built. Captain Turner handed the tablet back to Kevin without looking away from her. Is her boarding pass valid? He asked. Kevin hesitated, just for a fraction of a second. Then, yes. The word landed harder than anything else so far, because it confirmed what should have been obvious from the beginning. Reyes shifted his stance. Harold nodded once, slowly. Jasmine didn't move, but her breath caught. Lindsay stepped forward, her voice breaking through the silence again, desperate now. Captain, she refused to comply. She delayed boarding. We had reason to believe— Turner raised one hand. Not fast, not forceful, but absolute. Lindsay stopped mid-sentence, because something in that gesture said everything. Did you scan her boarding pass? Turner asked. The question was simple, direct, final. Lindsay's mouth opened, closed. I inspected it, she said. That was not the question. Her composure cracked, just slightly, but enough. No, she admitted. The word felt smaller coming from her. Turner turned to Kevin. After verifying her documentation, he said, did you recommend removing her from this aircraft? Kevin looked at the floor, then at the table, then finally at Vanessa. Yes. Another confession, another shift. The cabin no longer felt like a place of luxury. It felt like a place of record, of witness, of consequence. Vanessa's eyes moved slowly between them, not gloating, not angry, just present. Then let's be clear, she said. Her voice didn't rise, but it filled the space. I was accused without evidence. She let the words settle. My evidence was ignored. Another pause, and the solution offered was to remove me. No one spoke, because no one could argue with it. Not now. Not after everything that had just been confirmed. Captain Turner took a breath. Slow. Measured. Then he stepped fully into the aisle, positioning himself not between Vanessa and the others, but beside her. And that changed everything. "Ms. Cole," he said, his voice steady, respectful. "On behalf of this crew, I apologize." Vanessa didn't soften. "Don't apologize for something you haven't corrected," she said. The words landed harder than any accusation, because they were true. Lindsay's face drained of color. Kevin's shoulders lowered. Reyes looked down briefly. Jasmine's eyes filled, not with tears but with something sharper. Recognition. Nathan finally lowered his phone completely, not because the moment wasn't important, but because he realized he had been pointing it in the wrong direction. Vanessa reached down and picked up the black metal card, turned it once between her fingers, then set it back down. This time, not as a question, as an answer. "Now," she said quietly, "we can begin telling the truth." And no one in that cabin, not one person, could pretend they didn't know what that meant anymore. The silence that followed wasn't protective. It wasn't polite. It wasn't the kind that hides things. It was the kind that exposes them. Lindsay Harper stood frozen in the aisle, her hands now at her sides, fingers curling slightly as if searching for something to hold on to. But there was nothing left. No script, no authority, no version of the story that still made sense. "Captain, she began, her voice unsteady. Captain Turner didn't look at her. Not yet. His attention remained on Vanessa, his posture still beside her. Not in front, not above, but aligned. That alone said more than anything spoken. Kevin took a half step back, then another. The movement was small, but it carried weight. Because earlier, he had stepped forward. Now, he was retreating. Jasmine's phone caught every second. Not zoomed in, not dramatic, just steady. Because the truth didn't need embellishment. It only needed to be seen. Nathan Brooks stared down at his own screen, the live comments moving too fast now for him to process. "You got it wrong. Say something. Why were you filming her?" His jaw tightened. For the first time since he lifted his phone, he felt the heat of it. Not attention. Accountability. He swallowed, then slowly raised the phone again. But this time, not toward Vanessa, toward Lindsay, toward Kevin, toward the people who had created the moment. Harold Bennett stood fully now, his posture no longer hesitant. His shoulders squared, his voice steady when he spoke again. "You asked her to move," he said, looking directly at Lindsay, without checking her ticket. Lindsay's eyes flicked toward him, then away. "I was following procedure," she said quickly. "No," Harold replied, firm now. "You were following an assumption." The word landed harder than any accusation because it couldn't be dismissed. It couldn't be redirected. It was already proven. Reyes stood still, his hand no longer near his radio, his posture softer now, less defensive, more reflective. He looked at Vanessa, then at the boarding pass, then at the card, then back at the people around him. He exhaled slowly. "Ma'am," he said quietly, his voice lower now, stripped of authority. "I should have asked more questions." Vanessa met his gaze. "You asked one," she said. That was a start. It wasn't forgiveness, but it wasn't rejection either. It was acknowledgement, and that was enough to shift something else in the room. Kevin rubbed a hand across his mouth, his composure cracking in a way that no longer felt controlled. "This got out of hand," he muttered. Vanessa's eyes moved to him. No, she said. It stayed exactly in your control. Kevin froze. Because that was worse. Worse than losing control. Was realizing you had it all along. And chose wrong. Lindsay took a step forward again, desperation creeping into her voice. I didn't know who she was, she said. The sentence hung there. For a second, it almost sounded like an explanation. Almost. Vanessa turned to her slowly. Her expression didn't change, but something deeper settled into her gaze. That's the point, she said. Lindsay blinked, confused. Vanessa stepped forward just enough to close the space between them, not aggressively, not invading, but present. You weren't supposed to treat me better because of who I am, she continued. You were supposed to treat me fairly before you knew. The words landed with a quiet finality, the kind that didn't echo, because it didn't need to. Across the cabin, the woman with the pearls lowered her eyes, her fingers tightening around her bracelet. Nathan looked away from his screen for a moment. Jasmine swallowed. Harold nodded once. Because that was the truth. Not complicated, not hidden, just ignored. Captain Turner finally turned to Lindsay. His expression was no longer neutral. It wasn't angry. It was worse. Disappointed. Ms. Harper, he said, his voice controlled, formal. Step aside. Lindsay didn't move immediately. Then she did. Slow, mechanical, as if the command had taken a second to reach her. She stepped back toward the galley, her posture no longer sharp, her presence no longer commanding. Kevin looked at Turner. What do we do now? He asked. The question sounded smaller than it should have, because the answer was already visible. Turner glanced at Vanessa, then at the cabin, then at the cameras, then back at Kevin. Now, he said, we correct what should have been done from the beginning. The cabin held that moment, because correction didn't mean erasing. It meant acknowledging, recording, facing. Vanessa returned to her seat slowly, not because she had been asked to, because she chose to. The leather creaked softly beneath her as she sat, her posture unchanged, her presence just as steady as it had been at the start. The boarding pass rested in front of her, still bent, still valid. The black card sat beside it, no longer unnoticed, no longer misunderstood, just seen. And that was all it had ever required. For the truth to be seen, for the facts to be acknowledged, for someone, anyone, to choose to look instead of assume. But now that it had been seen, something else had to follow. The cabin didn't relax. It didn't return to normal. If anything, the air grew heavier, because recognition wasn't resolution. It was responsibility. Captain Turner stepped forward slightly, his presence steady but no longer distant. This aircraft is not departing, he said, his voice carrying clearly through the cabin, until this situation is formally addressed. A murmur moved through the passengers, not loud, but real. People shifted in their seats, exchanging glances, adjusting their posture as the reality of delay set in. But no one complained. Not now. Because everyone understood. This wasn't about a schedule anymore. Kevin swallowed. Captain, he said, his voice quieter than before. We can resolve this internally. There's no need to escalate. Yes, Turner said, cutting him off gently but firmly. There is. The word settled into the space like a weight. Kevin looked away. Because he knew escalation meant record. Record meant consequence. And consequence meant no way to quietly move past what had already happened. Vanessa sat still, her hands resting lightly on her lap again, her gaze steady but not confrontational. She didn't interrupt, didn't push, because she didn't need to. The moment had moved beyond her needing to prove anything. Now, they needed to prove something. To themselves, to each other, to the people watching. Jasmine lowered her phone slightly, her hand trembling just enough to remind her she was part of this now. Not just a witness, a participant in how the story would be remembered. She looked at Vanessa. Really looked this time. Not at her clothes, not at her seat, but at the way she held herself. There was no victory there, no satisfaction. Just steadiness. The kind that came from having lived through moments like this before. Moments where you were judged before you spoke, where silence became your only defense, and dignity, your only weapon. Jasmine felt something tighten in her chest, because she recognized it. Not from herself, but from people she had worked with, from clients, from stories she had heard, and never fully understood. Until now. Across the aisle, Harold shifted back into his seat slowly. Not because the moment was over, but because it had changed. He wasn't unsure anymore. He wasn't watching from a distance. He had chosen a side, and that choice stayed with him. Nathan Brooks stared at his phone again. The live stream was still running. The comments were relentless. You need to apologize. Say something. You made fun of her. His thumb hovered. Then, he did something different. He turned the camera toward himself. For the first time. His face filled the screen. Not confident. Not amused. Just honest. I got this wrong, he said quietly. The words weren't rehearsed. They didn't sound like content. They sounded like something harder to say. I thought I knew what I was seeing, he continued. I didn't. He paused, then lowered the phone again, not ending the stream, but no longer hiding behind it. At the front of the cabin, Kevin stepped back toward the aisle, his movements slower now, more measured. What exactly are you requesting? He asked Vanessa. The question had changed. Before, it was about removal. Now, it was about response. Vanessa looked at him, then at Captain Turner, then at the cabin. Her voice, when she spoke, remained calm. I'm not requesting anything personal, she said. That surprised him, because he had expected anger, demands, something directed at him, at Lindsay, at the situation, but she didn't give him that. This isn't about me being upset, she continued. It's about what happened. Kevin nodded slightly. What would you like done about it? Vanessa didn't answer immediately. She let the silence settle again, let the weight of the question be felt. Then, document it, she said. Simple, clear, unavoidable. Kevin frowned slightly. Document? What exactly? Vanessa's eyes held his. Everything, she said. The word carried more than its size. Who made the accusation? She continued. Who ignored verification? Who escalated without evidence? Who asked me to leave my seat without checking the truth? Each phrase landed deliberately. Each one tied to a person, a decision, a moment that could no longer be undone. Reyes stood straighter, because now, he was part of that record too, and he knew it. Captain Turner nodded once. That will be done, he said. Vanessa inclined her head slightly. Good, she replied. Lindsay shifted near the galley, her arms no longer crossed, her posture uncertain. This is being blown out of proportion, she said, her voice smaller now, searching for ground that no longer held. Vanessa turned her head toward her. Not sharply, not angrily, just directly. It became proportionate the moment you chose not to check, she said. Lindsay looked away, because there was nowhere left to stand. Kevin rubbed his hands together slowly. We can still resolve this privately, he said, quieter now. Vanessa's expression didn't change. You had privacy when you chose not to verify, she said. Now it's public. That settled it. Because that was the truth. This wasn't exposure. This was consequence. Jasmine raised her phone again, not to capture drama, but to preserve record. Harold nodded once more. Nathan stayed silent. Reyes stepped back, giving space where space was now required. And Captain Turner. He moved toward the front of the cabin, picking up the intercom with steady hands. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, his voice calm but firm. This aircraft will remain on hold while we address a serious conduct issue involving a passenger and crew interaction. No panic, no apology, just acknowledgement. And that changed everything. Because once something is named, it cannot be unseen. Vanessa leaned back slightly in her seat. Her hand moved once more to the tray table. She picked up the boarding pass, ran her thumb along the crease, smoothed it again, then set it down. Flat. Whole. Valid. Just like it had been from the beginning. The difference now was that everyone finally saw it. Not just the boarding pass, not just the card. They saw her. Vanessa Cole sat in seat 2A exactly as she had from the beginning. Back straight, hands resting lightly, her presence calm and unshaken. But something had shifted in the way the cabin held her. Before, she had been watched. Now, she was recognized. The distinction was quiet. But it changed everything. The air no longer pressed against her. It pressed against everyone else. Jasmine lowered her phone slowly, her fingers stiff from holding it so long. For the first time since she hit record, she wasn't thinking about angles or clarity or evidence. She was thinking about herself. About the moment she almost didn't press record. About the hesitation, the doubt. The way she had told herself it wasn't her place. Her eyes moved back to Vanessa. You didn't move, she said softly, almost to herself. Vanessa glanced toward her. No, she replied. Jasmine swallowed. I don't think I would have stayed, she admitted. Vanessa held her gaze for a moment. Most people don't, she said. There was no judgment in it. Just truth. And that truth landed deeper than anything louder could have. Across the aisle, Harold Bennett leaned forward, resting his hands on his knees. His voice came out rougher than before. I should have spoken sooner, he said. Vanessa turned toward him. You spoke, she said. Harold shook his head. Not when it mattered most. Vanessa didn't answer right away. She looked at him for a long moment. Then, it mattered when you did, she said. That was enough. It didn't erase the delay, but it acknowledged the choice. And that acknowledgement softened something in Harold's expression, something tight finally loosening. Nathan Brooks stood now, his phone no longer raised. He looked different, smaller, in a way that had nothing to do with space. I posted the full video, he said quietly. Not edited. Everything. No one reacted immediately. Vanessa looked at him. And the part where you believed it first? She asked. Nathan hesitated, then nodded. It's in there, he said. Vanessa held his gaze, then looked away. That was all he got. Not forgiveness, not condemnation. Just accountability accepted. Near the galley, Lindsay Harper stood alone. The space around her felt wider now, though she hadn't moved. Her posture had changed. Not sharp anymore. Not controlled. Her shoulders had lowered. Her arms hanging at her sides. Her fingers curled inward, like she was holding on to something that wasn't there. "I didn't know," she said again, quieter this time. It wasn't directed at anyone. It was directed at the moment. Vanessa turned slowly. "That was never the requirement," she said. Lindsay looked up, confusion flickering across her face. Vanessa's voice stayed calm. "You weren't asked to recognize me," she continued. "You were asked to respect me." The words didn't rise, but they filled the cabin. Lindsay's lips parted. No answer came. Because there wasn't one. Kevin stood near the aisle, his earlier confidence completely gone now. His tablet hung loosely in his hand, his posture uncertain, as if he had forgotten where to stand. "This will go to corporate," he said, almost automatically. Vanessa nodded once. "It should." No resistance. No hesitation. Just agreement. Because this wasn't about stopping it. It was about letting it be seen. Captain Turner stepped forward again, his presence steady, grounded. "A replacement crew is being arranged," he said. "This flight will not depart until all procedures are reviewed." A few passengers shifted, but again, no one complained, because the weight of what had happened still sat too heavily in the room. Reyes stepped closer to Vanessa, his voice lower now. "Ma'am," he said, "I've filed an incident report." Vanessa looked at him. "Thank you," she said. He nodded once, not relieved, but steadier, because now he had done something differently. Jasmine looked down at her phone again. The video had already started to spread. Messages were coming in, people asking, people reacting. But for once, she didn't feel like she was holding something viral. She felt like she was holding something important. She looked up again, at Vanessa, at the way she hadn't changed from the beginning to now. Same posture, same calm, same presence. The only difference was everyone else. Vanessa leaned back slightly in her seat, her gaze drifting toward the window. Outside, the sky had darkened just enough for the first hints of night to appear. Runway lights blinked in the distance, steady, reliable, unchanging, much like she had been. The new flight attendant approached quietly then. Grace Miller, early 40s, calm eyes, careful movements. She stopped a respectful distance from Vanessa. "Miss Cole," she said gently, "may I bring you something while we prepare the cabin?" Vanessa looked up at her. There was no tension in the exchange, no assumption, no performance, just respect. "Yes," Vanessa said. "Water would be fine." Grace nodded once. "I'll bring that right away." And she did. No hesitation, no doubt, no need to be told twice, because she had already seen what the others had taken too long to understand. Across the aisle, the woman with the pearls finally spoke again. Her voice was different now, quieter. "I'm sorry," she said. Vanessa turned slightly. The woman's eyes were lowered. "I shouldn't have said what I said earlier," she continued. "I assumed." Vanessa studied her for a moment, then said simply, "Remember that feeling?" The woman nodded. Because she would. Not the embarrassment, not the apology. But the moment she realized she had been wrong, that was the part that stayed. The cabin settled into something new, not normal, not comfortable, but honest. And in that honesty, there was space, the space for something to change. Vanessa looked out the window again, her reflection faint in the glass. For a moment, she saw not just herself, but every version of herself that had been told to move, to leave, to step aside. And she realized something quietly. This time, she hadn't. And because of that, something else had shifted too. Not just in the room, but in the people inside it. The ones who watched, the ones who hesitated, the ones who finally saw. And that would stay with them long after the flight was over. The aircraft didn't move right away, even after the announcement, even after the crew had been replaced, even after the paperwork had begun. It sat there on the runway, quiet under the fading light, as if the moment itself needed time to settle before anything else could begin again. Inside, the cabin had changed, not in its appearance. The leather was still smooth, the glasses still polished, the lighting still soft and controlled. But the energy, that was different, quieter. Not the silence from before, not the kind that hides, the kind that listens. Vanessa Cole remained in seat 2A, exactly where she had been from the beginning. Her posture hadn't changed. Her hands rested lightly in her lap again. Her gaze turned toward the window, where the last stretch of daylight met the deepening blue of evening. The boarding pass sat on the tray table, flattened now, still creased, but no longer dismissed. Beside it, the black metal card, no longer questioned, no longer ignored, just understood. Captain Turner stepped into the aisle once more, his uniform crisp, his expression steady but carrying the weight of a man who knew this flight would not be remembered for where it went, but for what happened before it left. "Ms. Cole," he said, his voice calm and direct. "Corporate has issued an immediate directive." Vanessa turned slightly, listening. "Ms. Harper has been removed from duty pending investigation," he continued. "Mr. Ross has been placed on administrative leave. A full review of passenger handling protocols has been initiated." The words moved through the cabin like a quiet verdict. No one reacted outwardly, but everyone felt it, because consequences, real ones, had followed. Vanessa nodded once, not satisfied, not relieved, just acknowledging. "Thank you," she said. Captain Turner held her gaze for a moment, then added more quietly, "This should have been handled differently from the start." Vanessa didn't answer right away. She looked back out the window, at the runway lights blinking in steady intervals, at the reflection of the cabin layered over the glass. Then, "It still can be," she said. The words weren't about this flight. They were about everything beyond it. Turner nodded, because he understood. Across the aisle, Harold Bennett sat back in his seat, his hands resting loosely now, his shoulders no longer tense. He looked older in that moment, not from the time that had passed, but from the weight of what he had witnessed. His wife reached for his hand. This time, he didn't pull away. Nathan Brooks leaned back as well, his phone finally dark in his hand. No stream, no comments, just silence. He looked toward Vanessa once more, not as a subject, not as content, but as a person he had misjudged. And that would stay with him longer than any video ever could. Jasmine Lee closed her phone gently, placing it on her lap. Her mind was still moving, still processing. But one thing had settled clearly. She would never hesitate the same way again. Not in a moment like that. Not when silence meant something. Not when it cost something. Near the galley, Lindsay Harper was gone. No dramatic exit. No confrontation. Just absence. The space where she had stood now felt empty, because authority, when misused, doesn't leave behind power. It leaves behind consequence. Kevin Ross had been escorted off quietly as well. No resistance, No explanation. Just the understanding that some decisions follow you longer than others. Reyes stood near the door, finishing his report, his posture different now, less rigid, more aware. He glanced toward Vanessa once more, then lowered his eyes slightly, a gesture small enough that most wouldn't notice, but clear enough that it mattered. Grace Miller returned with a fresh glass of water, placing it gently on Vanessa's tray. "Let me know if you need anything else," she said softly. Vanessa nodded. "I will." Grace smiled. Not forced. Not professional. Just genuine. And that too felt different. Because respect, real respect, didn't need to be announced. It just showed. The cabin settled again. But this time, there was no tension. No waiting. Just a quiet understanding that something important had happened, and that it wouldn't be undone. Vanessa reached for her phone. A message sat waiting. Board review approved. Policy update initiated. Passenger dignity protocol to be implemented system-wide. She read it once, then set the phone down. No reaction. Because this wasn't the victory. The victory had been something else, something quieter. She looked down at the boarding pass again, ran her fingers over the crease one last time, then placed it flat on the table, perfectly aligned, as it should have been from the beginning. Outside, the engines began to rise, low at first, then stronger. The aircraft started to move, slow, steady, forward. No announcement marked the exact moment the wheels began to roll, but everyone felt it, because movement, after something like that, means more than just travel. It means continuation. It means change. Vanessa leaned her head slightly toward the window, watching the runway lights pass in soft lines of gold. For a moment, her reflection met her own eyes. Calm, steady, unmoved. She hadn't raised her voice. She hadn't demanded to be seen. She had simply stayed. And because of that, the truth had caught up. The aircraft turned toward the runway, paused, then accelerated. The city lights stretched below them as the jet lifted into the night sky. Inside the cabin, no one spoke, not because they were told not to, but because there was nothing left to say. They had seen it, they had felt it, they had been part of it, and now, they would carry it with them. Long after the flight ended, long after the moment passed, because some things don't stay behind, they follow you, quietly, steadily, like a reflection you can't quite look away from. And as the aircraft disappeared into the dark sky, Vanessa Cole remained exactly who she had been from the start. A woman who never left her seat, because she never had to. And maybe that was the part they would remember most. That she didn't win by standing up. She won by refusing to move. If you had been in that cabin, would you have spoken when it mattered? Or would you have waited until it was too late? Vanessa Cole never raised her voice. She just stayed in seat 2A holding that bent boarding pass until the truth finally caught up with everyone in the room. This story isn't about power revealing itself. It's about the cost of judging too quickly and how one wrong assumption can unravel an entire system in front of your eyes. Because sometimes, the biggest mistake isn't what we do. It's what we believe without ever checking. So the next time you feel certain about someone in front of you, pause for just a second. Remember Vanessa Cole, and ask yourself if you're seeing the truth or just the story you've already decided to believe. If this story hit you, comment 1 below, and tell me honestly, have you ever stayed silent in a moment when you knew something wasn't right? There's another story coming up next, one that might make you rethink what real courage actually looks like.